hopefully the mouse works. Somebody broke the mouse. You know, a good person trying to get by broke the mouse. All right.
Okay. Do I have the mouse?
You should.
Oh.
Is it punching? Try this. Yeah, the mouse doesn't work quite. Do this. Just go backwards on the roll.
Okay. Oh.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. All right, guys. So my project, this is called The Highway of Tears. So a little bit of background on this this road. So this is in Canada, around the British Columbia area, and the reason it's called the Highway of Tears is because so many women have gone missing along, been murdered or missing along this road, that during like a vigil, someone like nicknamed it the Highway of Tears because they were imagining their family members like crying over their disappearances. So around this area, it is surrounded by poverty. So lots of people don't have cars or ways to get around except for like hitchhiking or getting rides from people that are kind of sketchy. So lots of those lead to people disappearing and being murdered. The most recent disappearance was this year in October. She disappeared, then her remains were found on the 7th of November. Her disappearance was like the 80th along this road. So it's important to know that also along this road that there are many Indigenous women who use this road, but with often Indigenous women experience violence and homicides at greater rates than Caucasian women. And so with this, there's like a disproportionate amount of those women who are disappearing and being murdered. And the RCMP, the Royal Canada Mounted Police, they say that like it's about 18 women, but other Indigenous tribes have been like, it's actually a lot more than that. And with a lot of these investigations, they go nowhere. There are no leads, no suspects, and it's just a cold case that some people attribute to systemic racism within Canada because it's like here in the US, there is discrimination against them, and those investigations are not taken seriously because they're Indigenous. So in 2005, they really couldn't ignore like the disappearances along this highway anymore, so they started a project called ePANA, and there were 4 criteria that the women had to meet in order to like be investigated further. They had to be female, they had to be in a high risk, like they had to be high risk behavior, like hitchhiking alone, or engaging in sex work. It had to be on Highway 16 or on one of its neighboring highways, and it had to have been a stranger that attacked them or kidnapped them. And they started out with 18 cases, but that doubled to 18. And out of these 18 girls, 10 of them were Indigenous, that's like 55%.
So that was the organization to try to investigate.
Yes. So, I know it says only 2, but it's only one that has been solved with confidence. Monica Jack. She was the youngest victim along this trail. She was riding her bike and she disappeared, but years later, her remains were found, and with the DNA and on that, they were able to find the person who killed her. So her and he went to prison. But then with Colleen McMillan, Gail Ways, and Pamela Darlington, DNA was found like on all of them. Bobby Jack Fowler, he was like a serial killer in that area, from what I read. But he died before they could convict him and before they could conclude that he was their killer, but they were pretty certain that he was who killed them. But out of those, none of the rest of these girls have been found, or their murderer has not been caught. And this was started in like 2005, and given that it's 2023, it didn't say anything in the articles that I read, but it's probably safe to assume that this project is severely disfunded and not really done anymore. And this also happens in Montana. So this has been happening like for a while because there's a high population of Indigenous people here. But with Selena Not Afraid, she disappeared coming home from a New Year's Eve party, and her family got national attention, and there were thousands of people, like not thousands, a lot of people looking out for her, a lot more than generally happen. And they did find her, but she had died, and the case was hypothermia, but that's not, there could have been other things involved. And there's no, like the EPANA in Canada, there's nothing in Montana that mimics that. There's just regular police investigations that sometimes go nowhere. And so this was in 2020, and in 2020 I visited Missoula with like my grandparents, and I happened to be, we were on a bridge, and a march happened for Selena and the other girls who had disappeared, and I didn't know what that meant at all. So like I went home and like searched it up. And I was really surprised that I've like never heard of this, because like 28 people missing is astronomical. I don't know if you guys remember Gabby Petito. She disappeared in like 2020, I think. She was a white woman, and it was a national like manhunt for the person who found her. And there was a lot of criticism there, because that kind of search isn't given to girls who are like lower income and who are Indigenous. So it's like, so who deserves a national-wide manhunt for the person who killed her and who doesn't? So I found this when I was researching, a Jamie Black, she started this art installment called the Red Dress Project. Some dresses are donated by families of those who've gone missing, and others are just like bought. But the idea is that, so red is the only color that spirits can see. So it's like they're summoning the spirits back back to their family, and it allows their story to be told. But it's like the victims are supposed to be there. Like these dresses are not supposed to be empty. And they said that this was supposed to provoke an emotional reaction, and It's a social commentary of like how many Indigenous women have gone missing in Canada and the U.S. And it's a lot of. Okay, so this is the organization that it's Murdered Missing Indigenous Women, and recently, like, more legislation has been passed to prevent these like disappearances from going on for a really long time, and like get the people who murdered or kidnapped these women. And I don't know like how much support it has, but like in 2021 there was like a Savannah Act. The Savannah Act was passed to like to make sure that like investigations are done properly or something.
Where was this at?
What?
Where was this at? This was in Canada.
This is both in the U.S. and in Canada. These were like signs that I saw in Missoula. This is like what I looked at.
I meant the Savannah.
Oh, I'm sorry. I think in the U.S.
That's still an issue to this day.
Mm-hmm.
That's interesting. You saw the march. I remember that happened. I remember the march. They did something here, but nothing like it was.
Mm-hmm. And I thought it was like a Black Lives Matter march, but it was not. It was MMIW. Okay.
Yeah, that's really scary. And good start. Good job. All right. Yeah, it's pretty good. For years, they never investigated. So a lot of people have done this one, and so like Econ, that wasn't going on when I first had this as a topic. There's nothing. So they've done a little bit, but all right. Good job. We go right to Lizzie Borden.
Yeah.
Yes. There. And let me get it set up. Thank you. So my mouse is broken. We have that scary image behind. And so just on the scroll back, and that moves it, and then you want to go
like that?
Yeah, and then you want to go forward, go back to where you were, go back, moves it forward, moves it back. I don't know.
Okay. I'll see if I don't mess it up.
And it's all these.
Okay. So
Give me 1 sec. 1 sec. Okay.
Alright, so I did Lizzie Borden. So location and time. The crime took place in 19th century Fall River, Massachusetts, in Borden House. The date was August 4th, 1892. During the 19th century, there was a lot of nativism, which is kind of like the belief of people who were born in the U.S. first and like people who immigrate here second. Sexism, and you had to be kind of like religious during this time, and that kind of like played into her conviction. So who were the Bordens? They were a family that lived in Fall River, Massachusetts, that composed of a stepmother, Abby, father, Andrew, and 2 daughters named Emma and Lizzie. I found this from like looking at their gravestones. The mother of the 2 daughters died 3 years prior to the murders, and then what I found is that they also had a sister who was born in 1851 who had died at a year old named Alice, and then their biological mother's name was Sir Anthony Morris Borden. So they were an extremely religious and successful family. Andrew was very rich and like had a lot of money, but he was also not really willing to spend it, so they didn't exactly live in a rich neighborhood. They also had a maid who lived with them who's named Bridget, but they called her Maggie. She was an Irish immigrant. It is important to note at the time, Andrew wasn't exactly popular. It couldn't find the reason why. It just said that he wasn't really popular at the time. So who was Lizzie Borden? She was a Sunday school teacher, and she was active in a lot of like religious and women's groups. It was also rumored that she thought her stepmother married her father for his money, and they had a fallout for the like murders, and she stopped calling her like mother and started calling her Mrs. Borden. So, okay, the weeks leading up to the murders, it was rumored that there was fighting within the family. Lizzie and her sister Emma supposedly went on a trip to escape the house and the tensions in the house in July. Escape the tensions in July before the murders. One of the suspected reasons for there being fighting between the family is the question of Andrew's estate and who the money would go to. Abby's family had received property and the sisters wanted the same treatment. They also had an uncle stay with them before the murders. The uncle was John Morris, who was from their previous marriage. And so they were talking about transfer of property. The family had also been sick with food poisoning, but they believed it was from mutton that they had consumed a couple weeks before the murders. So on the night of the morning of the murders, Abby went upstairs between 9 and 10:30 a.m. They have this time frame due to forensic evidence. She was hit with what was assumed to be a hatchet about 18 times. So a lot of people assume it was like confirmed to be a hatchet, but I found it was never actually confirmed what hit Andrew and Abby. Andrew came home roughly 10 a.m. and wasn't able to open the door, and Bridget had to open it for him. Bridget states in her testimony at the trial that Lizzie was laughing at the top of the stairs while she opened the door. Andrew then took a nap on the sofa. So as you can see in this picture, he's wearing his boots, but in Bridget's testimony, she said that she actually took them off before he went to take a nap. At 11:10, Lizzie proclaimed that her father was dead, and Bridget came downstairs and they found his body on the couch. It was estimated that he was hit about 11 to 10 times, and with what was assumed to be the hatchet that they found in the basement. So the trial happened the next year in June. Lizzie was arrested on August 11th. A lot of evidence for the case seemed to have been tampered with, including the hatchet that had been found in the basement, and that was what they assumed was the murder weapon. It had been cleaned of any blood, and there wasn't like any fingerprints found on it. In Lizzie's testimony, she said that she was out in the barn during the murders, and Bridget claimed that she was taking a nap upstairs. I also found some claims that she was washing windows, but either way, she was in the house at the time that it happened. So evidence that Lizzie was the one to do it. There was no sign of forced entry to the house, and it was happening in the middle of the day, kind of so the neighbors would have seen people entering the house. There's also reports that she burned clothes that might have had blood on it and tried to pass them off as baseboard paint. It was also alleged that she tried to buy prussic acid, which is a poison, a few days before the murders, but she was unsuccessful. Since both of her parents were dead, both her and her sister inherited quite a bit of money. When a neighbor came to help them after the discovery of Andrew's body, Lizzie also told a neighbor that Maggie, that she thought Abby went upstairs, and that's where they found her body. So evidence she might have been innocent. At the time, there wasn't a lot of knowledge about forensic science, so really there was no forensic evidence that she was the one to do it. It was all circumstantial. It was also believed that a lot of people wanted her father dead due to his money. She was also wearing an unstained dress at the time when the bodies were found, and she wouldn't have had a lot of time to change because dresses at this period were like the kind of dresses where would have been tied into them. They're not like dresses today where you could have just changed in like 5 minutes. So what was the final verdict? Legally, it is unsolved because she was acquitted, and no one was charged afterwards with the murders. So post-murder, so this is a picture of Mackie, who was the maid. Both Emma and Lizzie bought a house in a wealthy neighborhood with their father's money, and they lived there together until they had a falling out, and then Emma moved away. Lizzie was ostracized by the community after the murders, and when she died, not really anyone came to her funeral. Maggie actually moved to Anaconda after the murders, and she died in Butte, and I didn't find that out until my parents told me, and I looked into it, and I thought that was really interesting. So before I get into the next stuff, I know it might seem like I'm joking around a lot. I just want you to remember that I'm laughing not because I think it's absolutely hilarious. I'm laughing because I think it's really messed up, and I think this is what we've come to as a society. So just keep that in mind. Popular theories. So Another theory is that their uncle, John Morris, actually committed the murders. Evidence for this was he was unaccounted for at the time of the murders. He was staying with them, but had left that morning. Abby's body was found in his guest bedroom, and there was a failing business between him and Andrew, and there was also discussions of the will. The next one has no evidence for it. It's just a little fun fan fiction theory, but there is a theory that Maggie and Lizzie did it together because they were romantically involved, but again, there is no evidence for that. It's just internet theory. Personal evaluation, I think Lizzie probably did it. I think Maggie probably helped, and the reason I think she probably helped was because she probably didn't really have a choice. She was an Irish immigrant in the time when nativism was like really rampant, and I don't think she would have been believed had she told the truth. And she was, helping her employer, so that also would have affected her ability to get a job afterwards. So she probably really didn't have a choice in helping hide her own will. So, pop culture. This is pop stuff. There is a children's rhyme, which is up here on the board. There's also a lot of movies and TV shows. I haven't seen either of these, but I've heard they're both good. They have Christina Ricci in them, who was Wednesday Addams in the original Addams movies, and then a lot of other stuff. So, supposedly the house is haunted. It has been featured in a few paranormal investigations, including Ghost Adventures on the Travel Channel and BuzzFeed Unsolved. The claims that the house are haunted so supposedly they're the spirits of Andrew and Abby Borden because they died there, and 2 children that were murdered in the house next door in 1848, and sometimes even Lizzie Borden. I don't know how accurate that would be because she died in a different neighborhood. If you want Lizzie to leave you alone, apparently you better leave money on her address or something. So this is the messed up part. It is now a bed and breakfast. Technically, it's not referred to as a bed and breakfast. I would consider it a bed and breakfast because of the way it's set up. I don't know if you've ever stayed at a bed and breakfast, but it's pretty much similar to how you would stay at one, and it's kind of sick and sad. Yeah, you can spend the night in the room they died in the room Abby died in. You unfortunately cannot stay in the room that Andrew died in because it is a common area where you can sit. So, what is it like staying here? There are ghost tours that happen at night. You can walk around outside, or you can come in during the day and just go on fun little tours. There's a gift shop. All merchandise can also be bought online. So here are some questions from the frequently asked page, just to show how we've become desensitized as a society. Yes, you can stay in the room that Abby was murdered in, but because the other room is a common room, you cannot stay there. Yes, there is Wi-Fi. There are no TVs. You do have to rent a projector. You can do something special to your room reservation, including having them put in rose petals, a stuffed animal, or their favorites, a hatchet and a haunted doll. Yes, children can attend the tours. You have to be 10 and up. No Ouija boards are not available. They are banned on the premises. And that is in the rules too. You will be kicked out. You can also have weddings. Yes. It's disgusting. And there are my sources. And behind the sources are some of the rules and there is you can see in here where it says Ouija boards are banned. Yeah, Ouija boards are not permitted on the property.
And there's a gift shop, right? So we're good.
Yes, there is a gift shop. Where is it? So I took a screenshot. There is a bobblehead. There's a bloody axe baseball cap, bookmark. Some other things I found, a teddy bear with a hatchet and a t-shirt.
There. So you think it was Lizzie?
I think it was Lizzie.
Yeah, this was this was a national case. Everyone called. All right, good job. Come back to that qualifier. I'm glad you showed that stuff too. Very good. Who is next? Who's saying me? Okay. Speaking of hitchhikers. Give me 1 sec. Okay, go.
Great.
Right, you have to move the mouse. And use the roller.
Alright.
So use the roller.
Spoilers.
Go
Yep.
back.
Yep. I got it.
You.
I got it.
Alright, go.
Alright. Yo. So I have The Hitchhiker Killer by me. Okay. So this is Donald Pee Wee Gaskins. I will refer to him as Pee Wee because you'll see why. So he was born March 13th, 1933, Florence County, South Carolina. He was really neglected and abused. He was neglected by his mother, and he was abused by a male relative. It doesn't really say who, but a lot of people think it was like his stepdad or someone that his mom was like involved with. And he was really like so heavily neglected by his mother from like pretty much his birth that it said when he was 1, he ended up drinking a whole bottle of kerosene. And then it would have caused him to have like seizures up until he was 3. So most likely brain damage. Okay, so now you have, this is Pee Wee when he was younger. So now we have like the troublesome trio. He was like involved with, it was these 3 kids. It was Pee Wee, Danny, and Marsh. They robbed houses, got prostitutes, and other not great stuff. They ended up getting caught after doing something not good that I won't get into. But basically they ended up getting beat by parents until they started to bleed. He was around like 11 to like 13 at the time. Yeah, so not great stuff from a very young age. Okay, first time he goes to prison. Reformatory school, but basically. So basically the group disbanded, and then after the group disbanded, he basically would like rob houses on his own. Yeah. And then at age 13, he was robbing a house, got caught by a young woman. I assume it's like her house, but I think from what I read, it seemed like she was like a child, like below the age of 18. So this probably wasn't like her house. It might have been like her parents' house or something, but she caught him. He assaulted her with an axe, hit her in the head with an axe. She survived, big thumbs up. And then he took the axe away from her, hit her in the head with it. Yeah. Okay, hold on, pause. She came in with an axe to attack him. He took the axe away from her and then attacked her in the head. All right. Yeah, she survived, reported him. It is said that, so the reason why I'm calling him Pee Wee is that apparently up until this time, he did not know that his real name was Donald until he was read his sentencing. So like, it was just like not something that he was called. And then after that, he spent 5 years in a reform school. He escaped like halfway through or so, got married, and then went back. Weird. It was weird. But yeah, and then he returned back to finish out his sentencing until he was 18. Ooh. And then at 18, he was arrested again for another assault, and then was sentenced to 6 years in prison. I don't know why I didn't put this on, but he was sentenced to 6 years in prison at the South Carolina Penitentiary, and then due to his to how small he was like 5'4" and like 100
60 pounds, like a very small guy. He killed another guy in prison because he was like being abused and stuff like that, stuff that happens in prison. He claimed it was self-defense, but was sentenced another 3 years for involuntary manslaughter. He definitely did it on purpose. And then he got rearrested for a rape of a 12-year-old girl, but then was absconded, so he basically like fled from the sentencing, didn't show up, and like no one could find him. And then he was rearrested in Georgia and then went back to prison for 8 years. So now we're getting to his first like maybe murders. In September of 19, so this is all like alleged, like we don't know for sure that he did this, but he claims that in September of 1969, he found a blonde female hitchhiker, brutally murdered her, and like sunk her in a lake. And he apparently did this like continuously every 6 weeks. Every 6 weeks, going along the coast of like the eastern U.S., southeastern U.S., and killed these people, hitchhikers, and he called them his coastal kills. That's amazing. And he said he killed like from 80 to 90 people. This was never confirmed. I don't think he actually did that. I think he might have actually killed that female hitchhiker, but I doubt he did 80 to 90. That's probably not true. Okay, so now we're gonna get into the confirmed murders. I'm gonna go through these quickly, but first murder was Janice Kirby, who was 15, and her friend Patricia Ann Halsbrook. Janice Kirby was his niece, and they were both beat to death. The reason why is kind of unknown. It could have been drug abuse. He claims it was because they were abusing drugs, which doesn't really make sense. But a lot of people thought, oh, he was doing it so he could sexually assault them, whatever. And then in 1971 or 1972, he killed this woman named Martha Ann Dix Jr., who was 22 and was allegedly pregnant with his child. Probably wasn't, and he poisoned her. He killed a lot of people in a lot of different ways. All right, and then in 1973, he killed Doreen Hope Dempsey, who was 22, and her daughter Robin Michelle Dempsey. He drowned them. This is Doreen Hope Dempsey. She was white, but he killed her because apparently she was pregnant with a black man's child, and he was like, none of that, and so he killed her. 1974, Johnny Sellers and Jessie Judy, I think it was his ex-girlfriend, but like they were together. Johnny was shot in the head and Jessie Judy was stabbed. This was to hide up the murder of Doreen, I believe. All right, 1975 was a big year for him, guys. So this is my favorite one. I say that because it's interesting. But Silas Yates, he was hired to murder this guy, and he was found with his throat slit. But Pee Wee ended up being like, no, that's not what happened. I karate chopped him in the throat, and it looked like his throat was slit, but I'm just so, like, that powerful. Hilarious, I read that. Yeah, and then he killed Diane Bellamy Neely and Avery Leroy Howard to hide up other stuff, and then, not really important. And then Kim Gilkins, who was 13, I'm pretty sure, I think he raped her and then killed her. And then Dennis Bellamy and John Henry Knight, who are the two murders that got him caught. Okay, we'll talk about. Okay, so in total he killed 14 people. 12 of them were out of prison. Okay, so November 14th, 1975, Walter Neely, who was a criminal associate of his, basically went to the police and was like, I know this guy, and he killed Dennis Bellamy and John Henry Knight. And they were like, cool. Went to his house, found all the bodies of his victims, of his confirmed victims, in the backyard. This is a picture of, basically shallow graves. It's kind of hard to see, but this right here is a bone. I assume it's like a femur or something like that from the way it looks, but this was the crime scene photos from one of the graves. Mouse is working. Okay. So this is his last murder. Another murder for hire in CCI, which was the institution he went to. This was in 1982. He killed Rudolph Tyner, who was arrested for a double homicide, also on death row, and basically he killed two like shop owners, the Moons, and Pee-wee was hired by the Moon's son, Tony Simo, and was given like a C4, put it into a radio, and blew it up, and then he died. This was the first time in South Carolina history that a black man was killed by a white man in prison. So that's fun. With a C4 explosive. Great, fun guy. Okay. So he was sentenced to death, and then there was a ruling that Supreme Court ruling that was like, no, actually you can't do the death sentence. And then he was sentenced to life, but then he was resentenced to death because that law changed. On September 6th, 1991 was the day he was killed, or that he was, he was shocked, dead, died. Yeah, he died. He split his wrist the day of, wasn't successful, got him all patched up, and it said like he was literally sitting in the chair with bandages still like bleeding. Like basically hours before that happened. Got electrocuted, electric chair. His last words were, "I'll let my lawyers talk for me, I'm ready to go." That's no exciting.
Any legacy of this?
A lot of people are basically because of this. People are now really scared of like hitchhiking, and because of just like he claimed to kill so many people from hitchhiking, people are like, yeah, we probably shouldn't do that anymore. So that's a big reason why you don't really see people hitchhiking, and you don't really pick up hitchhikers. So.
Yeah, that's the thing, yeah. He scared everybody. It used to be a normal thing. All right, good job. A lot of stuff there. What a brutal person. Yeah. Give me 1 sec. Oh, we're on the same vein, aren't we? Oh, boy. Okay, go ahead, sorry.
Okay. Get ready, guys. This is a lot. Okay. So I chose Ed Gein. He was called the Plainfield Ghoul, and he was a serial killer as well as a body snatcher. He also went by other names, including Eddie, which is Ed, Mad Butcher, the Plainfield Butcher, and the Plainfield Killer.
So I like how you have all these bloody names
I know.
in it.
Yeah. He had 2 confirmed murders, and then he was suspected for 7 more, and he took around 9 bodies, graves, if you didn't know what a body snatcher was. He was born August 27th, 1906, in La Crosse, Wisconsin. Considering he was extremely religious, especially his mother, who was Augusta Wilhelm Gein. She believed in the innate immorality of the world. She thought that drinking and all women except for her were evil and were from the devil. And if Henry or Ed, which Henry was his brother, were related to a woman, or were seen talking to a woman, they would get beat. All of that. His father was an alcoholic, and he had a hard time holding a job, and so his mom also really, really disliked her husband. But of course, being religious, she also really frowned on divorce. So she would tell the kids, she would tell both Henry and Ed that they were going to grow up to be failures like their father. and a lot of that. They were only allowed to leave the farm for school, and then so they would leave from the farm to go to school and then just come back. And they weren't allowed to have friends. In fact, if they were seen making friends, they would get beaten and punished extensively. And in May 1944, Henry, this is when they were both in their 40s. Henry was 43. They were out burning a marsh off of their property when the fire got out of control, and Ed lost track of his brother, and that's what he told the police. They sent a search party out, and they found, and Ed led them to his brother's body, and so he was dead, but it was found out through like the coroner that it was from a heart attack and not from the fire, because he was dead longer than the time that the fire was going, and there was no smoke in his lungs. And so people think that Ed killed Henry, but it's not completely confirmed. So during this time, like I said before, the family was super religious. They were Lutheran. From the town itself is a really religious town. It was a rural, it was in rural Wisconsin, and at this time, fundamentalists were really prevalent in this community, especially with the Guide family. And it was during World War II, and so especially after Ed's mom died and his father died, he couldn't really find a job, and so he worked babysitting jobs and just other odd jobs around town, which is a little bit concerning that he's with children, but we'll get into that. And so after his mom's death, which she died December 29th, 1945, 67 years old, Ed was devastated. There's a quote from the shocking true story of the original Psycho. He had lost his only friend and one true love, which he had a trauma bond with his mother. His mom was extremely abusive and a horrible person, but it was the only thing he had to hold on to, and he wasn't allowed to do other things that kids are supposed to, and should do as a part of their development. And so he didn't really know what to do with his life. He was the only remaining family member of the Guine family at that point, and so the farm went to him. He boarded up all of the rooms that his mother used. He put wooden boards and nailed them, and so no one was allowed to go in there, which nobody was going to his house anyway. But and it was more of like a symbolism thing for himself too, because his mother was a sacred thing for him, and she was the person who kept him away from the evils of the world. At that time, he really started to get into things like pulp magazine and adventure stories, which all of them pretty much depicted cannibalism and Nazis. And there was a few lampshades made out of human organs and skin, and so that's a picture on the left. Yeah, on the left, that's what the house looked like when the police showed up. As you can see, it is not very clean. And that's the picture of outside of the house. So going into the victims, the confirmed murders were Mary Hogan and Bernice Warden. And then there is I couldn't find anything else on the other two suspected murders, but most of them, the top two were children, and then the other ones were either work associates, and then his brother. So
I won't make you know them.
And so these are pictures that I found. I couldn't find one on all of them just because it was, I don't know, a long time ago, and a lot of these, there wasn't a ton known about them. So Bernice Warden and Mary Hogan are the two big ones. That's literally the only picture I could find. It's not very good. but that's kind of what we got. And then Georgia was a child. I think she was 7, and then Evelyn was 15. Okay, so Bernice Warden. So she was the owner of the Warden store. And so Ed robbed the store and shot Bernice. And so her son Frank was a deputy at the time, and so he became extremely suspicious of Ed because he found the cash register open and blood stains on the floor. And so he, being a deputy, kind of had the power to say like, hey, let's search this guy's house.
Oh. Can you express tomorrow?
Okay.
Yeah, cliffhanger then. Sound good? Yeah. All right, just remember where we're at. I put it down for Bernice Warden. All right, good. Good job today. Really good. Good presentation.
I'm stealing your tissue.
So you just go tomorrow. Sound good? Tomorrow?
Well, if they stop it after, well, if they stop it after you got them, they're broken.
Well, I broke my glasses last Friday, and I think it's a thing again.